Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of Strick and Roll. I'm your host, Shwin, and this is episode 36. I am joined by second time on the pod. His name is TrillBroDude. That's at TrillBroDude on Twitter. Mr. Trill, Mr. Bro, Mr. Dude, how are you doing?
I wish I was better. I wish I was coming back under different circumstances. I wish it was a happier occasion for me to come back on the pod. But, what do I know better than the Sixers and the NBA is what to do with the slop this offseason and all of the trades and the free agency and how to fix the team and all that. So I'm back under not good circumstances, but hopefully we can have a good conversation.
Yes, I'm sure that we will have a good conversation. And before we do have that good conversation, I'm going to read an ad copy as soon as I can pull it up. Very exciting as I stall for time. But we are set, and I am about to do it. Here we go. All right. Bet Online is your number one source for all your basketball info, stats, news, and scores. Get the latest odds and lines and the latest matchup reports for this year's NBA playoffs. Bet Online is your sports intel headquarters this season, as we have you covered for all your insider sports wagering needs, from basketball, MLB, NHL, hockey, golf to UFC and boxing. The fastest and easiest way to get your betting info, including live betting options and your favorite casino and card games available to play right from your home. Get into the action today. So head to the website or use your mobile device to join, and be sure to use our promo code BLEAV, that is BLEAV, to receive your 50% bonus on your first deposit. Bet Online, where the game starts. So that was great ad read, I gotta say. I do have a few more things to announce. The first being that the Strickland has an Instagram. Check that out. That is at strick.land on Instagram. We're posting all kinds of new content on there. The Strickland also has a YouTube channel where you may be watching this podcast. If you are, please hit like and then subscribe to the channel. That'd be a huge help to us. The Strickland also has a Patreon, which you can subscribe to. There are a number of different tiers. There is a $6 tier that gets you access to Pod Strickland, this podcast, not this podcast, but the podcast that I host every Friday with Prez. You also get access to the Strickland Mailbag, hosted by Andrew Steele, a.k.a. Doug, a.k.a. the Doug Bag, alongside Dallas Amico, that comes out every other week. You also get access to the Strickland Discord, where the conversation never stops. There are further tiers. There is a $9 tier that gets you access to Strickland Roll, my solo pod, where I rant and rave about the Knicks even more. This podcast right here, actually, where I get to do that. You also get access to wonderful weekly articles, rather, by Matthew Miranda, one of the best in the business. There are further tiers. There's a $15 tier, $30 tier, $50 tier, and $100 tier. Those come with a variety of additional benefits, like listening on pod recordings, merchandise discounts, and even potentially co-hosting a podcast alongside yours truly one day. Whether you choose to subscribe or not, none of this would be possible without you. So without further ado, let's get started. So the Sixers, let's just start here. Let's actually not start with the Sixers. Let's not start with the Knicks. Let's start with the team that me and you a couple months ago were jokingly like, they're done. They got nothing left in the tank. This team fucking sucks. The Zombie Heat, who are now zombieing their way into a 1-0 lead over the Celtics in the Eastern Conference Finals. Their zombie magic is real, and Eric Spoelstra is a genius, and Jimmy Butler is awesome, which is really annoying. Probably way more for you than it is for me, I'm sure.
Well, yeah. Certainly not. I mean, last time we were on, I was like, if the Heat flame out, do they trade Jimmy? That was where we were at last time.
Yep.
Because it felt like there was no way that they could possibly get out of the situation that they were in. If they're the 8 seed, they lose in the first round. Jimmy's only got so many years left. We were like, could he get traded to the Knicks? And now we're in a position where we actually had a podcast where we were doing after the Raptors lost in the play-in, we did an episode that we were going to do called Raptors Pack and Heat Pack. And I had a buddy on who is a Nets fan, and he was like, hey, don't do the Heat Pack part. And I was like, why? They're about to lose in the play-in. We should not take them seriously. And he was like, it's the Heat. You should wait to do the Heat Pack episode until they're officially dead. And I was like, okay. And now we're here a month later. They're in the conference finals. Like you said, they're up 1-0. Jimmy Butler goes. What's really funny to me is that I felt like, I know he injured his ankle, but I felt like Jimmy wasn't even that great in the Knicks series. Like,
I gotta say this, there are these Heat fans are like, his ankle was injured. Look at that. Like no, like I get it. His ankle was hurt.
Everyone's playing hurt right now.
Yeah, everybody's playing hurt. He had 6 days off between game 1 and game 3 when he played again. It's okay to just like you won the series. You won the war. Sure. It's okay to concede like maybe one skirmish didn't go in your favor. You know, like look, we lost Pearl Harbor, but we won the war. You know? It's okay. Like, you know, we look back at it, we honor it, and you know, we also are like, hey, we won the war. Fuck you. Shout out Roger Sterling and Mad Men. But like, you know, I just don't. Heat fans are just fucking so annoying about this. But it's like, yeah, like I don't know. Like it's okay to just think maybe the coach who coached him a shit ton and a team with, you know, certain physical wing defenders. Maybe they just did a better job on Jimmy. And like, this is the thing, like Grimes has done a good job on Jimmy going back to his rookie season. So It's just a guy who, for whatever reason, like Jimmy just has some trouble with. And it's not like, look, he still had a good series. Don't get me wrong. It's not like he was.
Yeah, no. Jimmy was great. It's just like, he wasn't playoff Jimmy that we've become accustomed to, which is like twice a series, Jimmy has games where he looks like the best player in the world. And that is something that he didn't really show during that series in a way that he did in the first round, in a way that he did in the Eastern Conference Finals last year. He seems to have this mental edge over the Boston Celtics. like I don't think it's a particularly bad matchup for the Celtics with the Heat and Jimmy Butler in general, but he seems to not be afraid of them in any way. Seems to take it right to him. And honestly, last night, for some reason, they were giving Jimmy every switch he wanted, and he was hunting his matchup. And I thought Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown did an okay job on him. I just thought that Jimmy was able to get the primary defender he wanted on him whenever he wanted, whether that was Malcolm Brogdon or Peyton Pritchard, and he was just taking them to work and had another classic vintage playoff Jimmy performance last night in Boston, which I don't know what it is about game ones in Boston, but if you were on the All-Star team like 4 or 5 years ago, you're just going to destroy Kyle Lowry, James Harden, and then Jimmy, who's still an all-NBA.
You're on mute. You're thinking about mute again. Sorry. I don't know.
Sorry about that.
No, you're good. You're good.
It keeps doing this over and over. I don't know if it's my computer or what, but yeah, I don't know what it is about the game ones in Boston. Just Boston at home in general has been very vulnerable up until that game 7, really, against the Sixers, where they destroyed them. So it feels like to me that this Boston team isn't as good as we thought. And Miami is a team that has a superstar player. They have really good veteran role players around him. Bam Adebayo has stepped up this playoffs in a way offensively that I didn't really anticipate from him. I know he's gotten better offensively, but he was kind of feasting last night against Boston in the post. And then if you get this performance out of Kevin Love, Kyle Lowry, there's a roulette of random Heat role players that have variance to their game because of the amount of threes that they shoot, because of the fact that they all can handle the ball, because of the fact that they're all high feel players. It feels like Kevin Love and Kyle Lowry, and even to an extent, like 4 role players like Max Strus and Caleb Martin are like, they know where to be. They know their roles. They know what to do. And Eric Spoelstra's pulling all the right levers at the right time for this team. And then, of course, they didn't shoot like crazy against the Knicks. They kind of just grinded their way to some wins. And now we're back to them shooting the hell out of the ball like they did in that Milwaukee series to start off the playoffs. Over 50% from 3 last night. As a team, they shot close to 50% in that Bucks series. And if you're a Boston fan, like, you got to be worried about this team, because that Sixers team was not as good as the Celtics, especially with the way that James Harden and Joel Embiid were so up and down in that series. Like the fact that series went 7 already would have made me feel a little bit queasy about the Celtics. But the fact that you lost another game 1 at home, they're 500 in their last 22 home playoff games. And even if you win this series, you got Nikola Jokic on the other side potentially, or LeBron James and Anthony Davis, probably Nikola Jokic, who's playing like the best player in the world right now. So like I just don't really know how I misevaluated this Boston team so much. I thought they were the clear championship favorites, and they have warts like every other team.
Yeah, I mean, I have a theory on this. What do you know? I think the Celtics were a pretty high paced team, if I remember correctly. I know the Bucks were like a top 5. They might have been one of the. I think they were like top 2 or 3 paced team. I feel like Miami is benefiting from that in these playoffs. I thought yesterday, especially, those Robert Williams minutes were brutal. It's just not a good matchup for him. It's not like a knock on him, really. I mean, we'll talk about your series against them. I thought he was a huge difference maker in that series. But like when you're playing Miami, I think if you're trying to play fast, it's really hard for big guys to keep up with Bam. And it's funny because Miami, like they're a slow team. They're one of the they're right next to the Knicks, I think, in terms of pace for the season anyway. I don't know what that is in the playoffs, but like
I wonder if the Kevin Love acquisitions change that just because of the outlet pass factor. Like I feel like that is something that might have like flipped the switch a little bit.
Yeah, it definitely could have. I'm just looking at this right now. So Boston actually wasn't that fast. They were 19th in pace this year.
I was going to say their half-court offense has been the best in the playoffs. So it's them in Denver. So
yeah, and Milwaukee was 10th. But it does feel to me like the Knicks playing a very, very grinded out, like this is 1996, whether you like it or not, style of play. And Miami is fine playing that way. They play that way during the regular season. I wonder if that's part of the reason why like the offense for Miami against the Knicks just wasn't very good. It felt like yesterday they were getting a lot more. And let's be real too. Like Jimmy was on one yesterday, and they, a couple guys made some tough shots, but they tended to get some quality shots that it feels like. And there's always that weird thing where it's like sometimes you can have an open shot, but it just doesn't feel like it's open at all. And it was like Lowry yesterday. Yeah, he hit some tough shots, but they all felt like in rhythm to me. It didn't feel that way against the Knicks. That for either team, by the way. Like it just felt like very much a war of attrition.
It was a rock fight.
Yeah, it was definitely a rock fight. And so like watching them against Boston yesterday, it's one game, so it's you shouldn't get too carried away. I do feel like I wouldn't be surprised if Boston goes away from the 2 big lineup. I think that would probably help them a lot. And it's funny because like I would be lying if I said that, before the game started, I was like, well, maybe you shouldn't start both bigs. Like I get why you start both bigs. The thing for me that I just made no sense about that game was the entire third quarter. And it's like, okay, they go up 12 and then, make this run. Missoula doesn't call a timeout. I think that the timeout that got called was a TV timeout. And then they come out and Miami extends the lead to 8. And I think Miami might have called a timeout. I don't remember exactly what happened, but he didn't call a timeout the entire
The Celtics
quarter, right?
cut back into their lead, and then Miami called a timeout.
Right. And it's just like, I watching that was so, and this is the difference to me between Spoelstra and some of their coaches. It's not just that he calls the timeouts when you should call them. It's that they come out of those timeouts and they always fucking execute. Literally, they always fucking execute some play, some open shot, something. And like whatever adjustments they make, they immediately will always go on like a 4-0, 5-0, 6-0 run. And that to me is specifically like not that by itself, but that's one component of why he is the best coach in the league to me. But like you saw that yesterday where, I hate this is the other thing that the Heat fans are doing now where it's like, oh, like maybe we are just as talented as all these other teams and you guys were underrating our talent. I'm like, I don't think like you should take it as an insult that the reasons people are like, well, like, I don't think it's an insult to be like, I think Miami is really just, they outperform every year because Spoelstra is a fucking genius and Jimmy Butler is Jimmy Butler and Bam is Bam and that's that. Like, I get it. Like, yeah, he gets, like, your role players are nice, but if you think, I don't know, who's like a good coach that is, let's just say, who's
Ty
the fucking,
Lue?
Yeah, let's say Ty Lue. Let's say you give Ty Lue the Miami Heat, and you're like, okay, here's Jimmy Butler, here's Bam. And here are all these fucking undrafted dudes. Like, just figure that out and make it happen. And also, Kyle Lowry's gonna be fat for like 1.5 years, and Tyler Hero is gonna score points and then give them up on the other end. Like, that's your team. I don't think
the reason they went on this run is because Tyler Hero got hurt.
Yes, I completely agree with that. Like,
we've been saying since last year the Heat are better without Tyler Hero, and it's not even a knock on Tyler Hero to me. It's the fact that they now play more role players who do role player things.
Yeah, and they don't have a guy like. So when they play Hero, and I get it because like he is a good offensive player, so you kind of have to play him.
And their offense usually sucks in the half court.
Right. And so it's like, but what happens is now when you play Duncan Robinson, it's two guys that another team can attack. Now when you play Kevin Love, there's two guys that another team can attack. Now it's just one. It's like one at most at any time, and a lot of times they have lineups where there's no real weak point. Like if your weakest defender is Gabe Vincent, like most of the time, his issues on defense
can even hold his own. Like Max Strus is strong. He's kind of like he's not athletic. A terrible defender. Yeah.
I'm a Strus guy. I've been a Strus guy since last year.
I think he's good. Yeah. I mean, I remember last year during the Sixers series being impressed by how well he moved his feet on defense and how strong he was. And I was like, wow, I had no idea.
Dude, Strus used to catch bodies in college. He tore his ACL, and like that's why he didn't get drafted or whatever. Yeah. But he was like he's an athlete.
He's athletic,
yeah, and like
sneaky athletic is
like he is something about him specifically makes him sneaky. But no, he's a guy I would like unironically want the Knicks to go after with their mid level. Same. Well, you want the Sixers to go after them.
Yes. I've been wanting to go after him since the Sixers series last year. Yeah, I was like, please give him the MLE.
Yeah. But like, it just, there's no, like, if your weak point is Gabe Vincent, like, that's really just a size mismatch. That's not that's not like, it's just, oh, he's food out there. It's not one of those. So I just, they're fucking annoying and they're zombies. I still think Boston will win this series, but this is what happens when Spoelstra he has an advantage in every series. Sure. In every series, he's the best guy on the sideline. And then you give him Jimmy, and Jimmy in any playoff series can be the best guy in that playoff series. And he's been the best guy.
Giannis, Embiid, Tatum, like there is no player that I honestly think Jokic is the only one that won't get outplayed by Jimmy. And I think that Jokic is playing at a level that like we've never seen from an offensive player since probably peak Steph in the playoffs. Like,
yeah, and Jokic will do it while he's like shoving burgers down between games.
Exactly.
Amazing player. Mm-hmm. But yeah, all right. Enough about the Heat and how annoying they are. Let's talk a little bit about how your Sixers are annoying to you. I messaged you after Game 6, and I was like, "Yeah, dude, that sucks." I think Doc's dead, and you're like, "Fuck. I don't care about Doc. Fuck the players."
I was so angry. I'm sorry. First off, I'm sorry for being emotional in the moment.
No, I get it.
I'm just done blaming. I was like, I'm done blaming Doc. Like, I felt like Doc. Okay, so the Sixers, every fan base does this. I do it. You do it. Every single fan base has them. There's 2 or 3 guys that you always hate on the team, whether it's the coach, players, and they're the scapegoats. And the fan base with the Sixers have always done it with these 3 guys, or 2 guys, really. It's Doc Rivers and Tobias Harris. And I said coming into this series, if we lose this series and Joel Embiid and James Harden aren't the best players in this series pretty much the whole time, I don't want to hear anything about role players. I don't want to hear anything about coaches. I don't want to hear anything like, go out and prove that you're the best players in this series, or we're not going to win. Like, that's pretty much what it comes down to. Boston has a better roster. They have better depth. Their stars aren't, I would say their stars probably are a little bit better built for the playoffs than the Sixers stars. And from a two-way perspective, they have an advantage over the Sixers. But we saw in game 1, we saw in game 4, we saw in game 5. When Joel Embiid and James Harden or James Harden in game 1 and 4, Joel Embiid in game 5 are the best players on the court, they can win against pretty much any team. And the consistency and the lack of consistency from our stars is what cost us this series. And I was like, I was frustrated because I felt like we were joking. It was like, the Denny Green, they are who we thought they were kind of thing. after game one, I was like, wow, the Sixers can really win this series. And Boston let him hang and let him hang and let him hang and let him hang. And the Sixers never once grabbed this series by the throat and just took it over. They were up with 4 minutes left in game 6. They were up 3 points with a chance to go to the Eastern Conference Finals for the first time since 2001. Joel Embiid touched the ball twice in the last 4 minutes, no times in the last 3 minutes. James Harden was throwing up all over himself. Tyrese Maxey, bless his heart, I love him. He was trying to do all he could, but he's just not ready for that moment yet. He's just not that level of player. I don't know if he'll ever get to be the level of player where he's closing playoff games. But I was just so frustrated because it feels like every time that there's a big moment, our stars get scared and they get blinded by the light, and they should be the best players in this series. They should have won us this series. And now we're in a situation where we lose in 7 in a very winnable series. We let it slip away. The role players came out in game 7 ready to go. D'Anthony Melton was fantastic. PJ Tucker was fantastic. Tobias Harris played well, other than on defense. He had nothing for Jason Tatum, but no one did.
Tatum was just on. He was on some shit.
That was an incredible heater in game. It was like I couldn't blame the Celtics defenders after game 1 when James Harden was looking like peak James Harden. Like I was like, I don't know what the fuck you can do. Like he's just roasting everything. Right. It's just incredible shot making. Like it's not anyone's fault. So I felt like it was a very winnable series. I felt like once again our stars let us down, and I felt like Doc is going to be the scapegoat. Maybe Tobias Harris gets traded, he's the scapegoat. But like at a certain point, if you're the best players on the team, you need to take over the series, and they had many opportunities to do that, and they did not.
Yeah, I've never been a Harden guy. I was actually kind of liked what I liked a lot of what I actually saw from him in Philly this year. I think I talked about this last time with you. But like this is why like the Harden stuff to me, I've just never, look, I remember a few years ago, right? There was like all the like, oh well, he's better than fucking Kobe ever was. Look at the numbers. Look at this. Look at that. And I'm like, I get all that shit, and I like advanced stats are cool, and there's obviously very much a place for them. When we're starting to talk about like comparing Harden to guys who have chipped up 4, 5, 6, 7 times, whatever the hell it is, that's when I'm a little out on that. Like you can't. I'm sorry. Like at some point, if you're that good, if you're that level of player, then it needs to happen in the critical moments, and you can't have an entire career where you don't win a championship and get compared favorably. And by favorably, I mean not like, oh, well, he played those guys toe to toe. But I mean like, remember like a few years ago, there was that whole thing like, oh, well, Harden's better than Steph. Steph's had help. And it's just like, that's the stupidest way to look at it.
That was always insane.
Yeah. Like, I'm like, that's just dumb. And like at some point, it's not like he's been flaming out the first round with these untalented rosters year after year, right? Like this is a guy who's played now with future Hall of Famers pretty consistently. He played with KD and Russ when he was young. I'm not blaming him, by the way, for them. Like they were babies. Of course, they didn't win the championship that year. But like he played with Chris Paul and Houston.
I was going to say KD, Russ, even Dwight Howard was close to it. He was still an all-star. Yep. Chris Paul, Russell Westbrook, Joel Embiid,
KD,
Kyrie Kyrie. Like, I mean, he's had plenty of opportunities with the talent.
Right. And it's just like at some point, if you don't get it done, then you're not on the level of those guys. And like, that's not really a criticism. That's like saying, okay, you're a Hall of Famer, but you're not like in the Pantheon. Like, that's okay. That's not like a huge criticism, but there were always people that wanted to put him in that conversation without like having done the deed. Like you have to actually do it before I can compare you to those guys. And that's always been like, and he's always had these fucking disaster moments. He's always had these disaster moments in big spots. And like, I'm a little bit sympathetic to how much he sacrificed kind of his natural play style to accommodate Embiid. But in those moments, like, I don't really care about that. Like you're talking about it, is you're up 3 with 4 minutes left of game 6. The sacrifices and all that shit. Like, if anything, you made all those sacrifices to be in this moment. So for these next 4 minutes, I need you to be James Harden. Can you just be James Harden for 4 minutes? That's all you needed from him. And he did nothing. It wasn't just like and it wasn't just missing shots, right? It's like you said, vomiting all over yourself, where you're just throwing the ball all over the place. You're almost
in game 7, he was dribbling the ball over his head.
Yeah, it was crazy. And then it's like, and then he does this thing where he'll like dribble the ball up and then just swing it to Maxey, and it's like, no, like you do something here, please. Like, don't just give it to Maxey and be like, well, my job here is finished. I
run 9 seconds off the shot clock or 15 seconds off the shot clock. You talked about pace earlier. It's very frustrating, the pace that the Sixers play at with Joel Embiid and James Harden, because I know a lot of fans are mad at we played ISO ball. And it's like, well, we had 2 of the best ISO scorers in the NBA. What did you expect? What are the end of playoff games? Are we running fucking like Spain pick and roll at the end of a playoff game? Like, it's all ISO ball, dude. This is Jason Tatum was just better in ISO at the end of game 6 than Joel Embiid and James Harden were. Like,
all you're trying to do is trying to get like favorable ISOs. Like and that's like kind of my thing with Tibbs, where people are like, well, just ISO ball at the end of games. And it's like, well, most games basically are ISO ball.
Everyone switches at the end of games.
Right. Right. So it's like, can you find a favorable mismatch, and can you do it in a way like for example, one frustration I have is it's not you're isolating, it's how telegraphed exactly what you're trying to do is, right? It's like, oh, like we're trying to get Brunson on ISO. Like, yeah, no fucking shit. But like, is there a way to do it where it's not just so blindingly obvious, and it's not just where, oh, he's top of the key, like we can all just load up here. Like, maybe you can have him come off the screen, and like, or you can even use him in the post. You can do a variety of different things, but it's a lack of creativity. But like with Harden, it's one of those things where, you know, if you have the ball that much, to some extent, it's on you. And it's like I won't totally kill Tibbs for, you know, oh, we're just ISOing Brunson all the time. I kill him for that, for like why are we doing this for 4 quarters? Right. But end of game stuff, that's fine to me. I don't really mind that.
End of game stuff is and also from the telegraphing standpoint, the one thing that always frustrated me when we telegraphed who we were trying to get on a switch was that teams would just scram switch, and they would switch behind the play so that they could avoid the matchup that James Harden wanted. In this series, they were giving him the Al Horford and the Malcolm Brogdon matchup.
Well, and
for the first 5 games of the series, he was taking advantage of it. Like, even when his numbers were shit, we were getting good outcomes of plays, because if we ended up getting that switch, they would send help on a Harden drive, and Harden would be able to kick it and put them in rotation and get us an open shot